welcome back. We are joined by a familiar face to the Groundskeeper Chat series now, Chase Straw with Texas A&M Turfgrass Science Program, or is it Extension?
Research and teaching.
Your titles.
I don't do extension.
Especially when Weston's the Extension guy.
Weston's my research associate, so he's the one that does everything for me.
Okay, perfect.
So if I don't have Weston, then I don't get anything that I do done.
We'll make sure we tag him in the video.
Yeah, please do. I thought about bringing him because he does everything.
All
he does all the hard work.
Credit to Weston.
Yeah, I do the data. He does all the hard work.
Perfect. Well, we're going to be talking about player safety, performance testing. You had a session here at SFMA this year, just talking about the highlights and some takeaways for people that may not have attended SFMA this year.
It's going to take some getting used to.
For sure.
Yeah.
So just in general, tell us a little bit about the research that you guys are currently, conducting, whatever you can say,
yep.
and just kind of the things that you guys are interested in doing in the new year.
Yeah, so we have a lot of ongoing research right now, and I think we talked about this in the past. A lot of my program is focused on athlete-surface interactions. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's also focused on precision turf management. So we also do a lot of golf work and sports field research. And what that basically means is performance testing, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in a minute, but quantifying field properties such as soil moisture, surface hardness, things like that, but then actually figuring out how that value, that data, actually influences the athletes, and then how can we use it to make some kind of meaningful management decision. And that's the ultimate goal. So right now we have a lot of ongoing projects related to wearable technologies. We equip athletes with GPS sensors on the back. We can measure their speed and performance variables. We've moved into ankle sensors now, where we can measure forces coming from the ground. I have 2 graduate students working on that. So really exciting stuff. Obviously, we're not doing it alone. We're working with some other biomechanics and our kinesiology department at Texas A&M. So really exciting research. We just got funded with SFMA research program to continue that work. So we're really excited about that. And then on the management side, more performance testing and targeted application. So a lot of the work that we're doing with athletes, we're mapping these variables. So we're figuring out the hardest spot on the field versus the softest spot on the field, the wettest spot on the field versus the driest spot on the field, and how do athletes interact with those areas. And then from a management standpoint, how can we manage to prevent it so that it's more uniform? And so we're looking at site-specific aerification, aerifying only the hard parts, wetting agents, we're messing around with wetting agents, irrigation strategies. So we have a lot of ongoing projects related to all of that. So it's a lot.
Yeah, that was a mouthful.
Yeah, a lot of it's in the field too.
Yeah.
So we do small plot research, but I like doing it in the field because we're fortunate we have capabilities to do large scale data collections so that we're able to do it in a real world setting.
Very cool. And all data points that sports field managers can utilize to kind of advocate for their position, whether they're at the Parks and Rec level or they're in the big leagues, to really help solidify what they're doing. Yeah. And so talk a little bit about that. Like, what are some of those main data points that if somebody is, looking to justify the testing that they want to conduct or even the equipment that they need in order to make sure that it's testing properly, how they can really use that data to help justify that?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and I think the best starting point is soil moisture. Is a soil moisture meter, because it really drives a lot of the mechanical properties of a sports field. So how hard it is versus how soft it is, and then obviously irrigation decisions. So there's restrictions in some areas of the country with how often you can irrigate. Soil moisture just drives everything. We're finding it drives performance. Some of the preliminary studies with injuries, we're seeing some relationship with injuries in high soil moisture areas. So I think that's a starting point, and honestly, it's probably the most affordable starting point, depending on what you do. And you have a handheld version now where you can go out and spot sample wherever your field, but you also have the in-ground sensors now too that we use quite a bit. So if you have trouble areas, get a couple of these in-ground soil moisture sensors. If you properly place them across your field, you can use that for decision making. The second one would be surface hardness, and that's a little bit more expensive, but it's a really good management tool. To just gauge how hard your field is. I mean, it's self-explanatory, right? You don't want it to be too hard, you don't want it to be too soft. The thing about all of these technologies is I always just try to push, what's your number? Like, my number might not be the same as your number, but what's the number that makes your field perform the best. And
Yep.
you figure that out through experience, but also through communication with your team, coaches, if you're at a park and rec, with maybe feedback from parents, things like that. So those would be the two main ones that I would start with. The Clegg's a little bit more expensive than the soil moisture, but those are probably, you'll get the most bang for your buck with those.
Definitely. And you mentioned it a little bit, like it really going for data points with those user groups. But I wonder, like, how do you help a user group articulate what they experienced on the field? Because as an athlete or as a parent, I'm sure sometimes it's just about a win or a loss.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you help them articulate what the experience was so that you can turn that into a data point?
Yeah. So through research, I don't want to say it's easy, but we can set up surveys and get feedbacks. I've done interviews before. Honestly, in a real world scenario, if they're not saying anything about your field, then you're probably doing a good job, right? The late, great Darren Daly told me that with the Bengals. He said, if they're not talking about us, then we're doing our job. So it really only gets brought up when something happens, like an injury or a major rain event. And some things are, you can't, even if you're testing every day, you can't prevent a major rainfall. But, when an injury occurs, if you're collecting data and you have these threshold ranges, you use scientific data through research. There's really no standards at any other level with surface hardness except for in the NFL, but a lot of people use that as a standard below 100 Gmax. As long as you're out collecting data, you're doing your due diligence. That's a word that we've been throwing out quite a bit. You're doing your due diligence because you're at least showing effort that you're trying to maintain a certain threshold. So whenever an event like that happens, you say, here, we're testing the field, we're within a certain range, something else probably caused it, and it wasn't the field. Yeah.
And that's a great way to phrase it, just doing that due diligence, because I think that, it is for so long been a behind-the-scenes occupation where a lot of people probably enjoy that element of it, where it's, Abby McNeil said the elf magic, like you're in behind the scenes. And I wonder if that's because they don't want some of their practices to be on the forefront because it could turn into a liability. Right. And how do you really combat that when, and what you said, that's great, like taking the data points and saying, okay, someone got injured, but it wasn't because we didn't aerate. Here's our aeration schedule. But how else could people kind of combat that fear of, taking the data points and making sure that they know it's not going to be used against them?
It's kind of the old school versus new school mentality type thing. I just think over time, instead of looking at it from that perspective, like if I have this data, then it's going to hurt me. Look at it from the standpoint, I have this data, it's going to help me.
Yep.
And do your homework and look into the research that's being done. Because not only are sports field managers starting to understand and know that this data is available to collect, but we got sports science people, at the higher levels that are looking at it, that they weren't considering it a few years ago. And it's going to trickle down to the park and rec. And some of these, I've been talking with companies here, risk management assessment, people just locally, insurance for artificial turf fields. Like maybe some of these people don't know about the testing right now. Yep. So you need to get on it because it's coming. And Definitely. It's going to take one event for it to be like, why are we not doing this? Yep. So yeah, I think getting over the fears, just like with anything, it's hard. Yep. We deal with a lot of different new technologies in turf, GPS sprayers. You see it all at the show. The robots. You all have the robots. It's coming. Maybe they can't afford it now. People can't afford it now, but 10 years from now, it's going to be normal.
Definitely.
So you just have to get over that hump and figure out how you can use the technology to your advantage. And we're making a lot of progress.
And just not be weary of the visibility that you could have as a sports
it was
manager.
good to hear at the lunch yesterday, James Burdog, the new president, talk about a technology push the next year. Like they want to embrace it instead of run away from it.
Definitely.
Because, in the end, we have these things that can drive themselves now, but somebody still has to be there to watch it. Like they're not taking jobs. It's just making it a little bit easier, making the job more efficient, so we can reallocate the labor, the resources to something else and improve the overall facility.
Definitely. And I saw your students getting selfies over here in the corner. You got to miss it, but they were. They'll probably use that as harassment later.
I'm sure they will.
But just in your position, what really has you hopeful with this next class of turf professionals coming up? They're entering a new age, as we've said here. Like so many different opportunities and resources that are going to be available to them.
We do our best to teach the new technologies, and it's hard to fit it into a curriculum. We're trying to make it a requirement where they get a GIS course and learn about GPS systems and satellites and how to handle spatial data. But it's hard. It's hard to get in. It's hard because, one, there's not a lot of people that know about it that are even a turf professor. There's not a lot of people that do the research that I'm doing. People are starting to do it. So having that background ourselves is hard. Even, I don't know if I could teach just a straight up spatial.
It's just too much.
class.
Yeah, there's a plethora of information.
But we try
out
to
there.
at least introduce them. We set up tours with people around here to try to get them to explain what the technology is. But they need to embrace it, and I told them that. They need to embrace there's going to be water restrictions, there's going to be pesticide restrictions, so GPS sprayers and targeted applications, variable rate, figuring out ways to reduce inputs is going to be very important. And then if they go sports fields, testing is going to be very important. It's going to be a common practice, so they need to embrace it. But I feel really good about our incoming students. Like everybody else, the numbers are dropping, unfortunately, across the country. There's a lot of challenges. One of our biggest challenges is acceptance as a freshman into the university. Last fall, we had 9 applicants to be freshman turfgrass students. 2 of them got accepted. And currently, to my knowledge...
And it's because of the GPA
just
requirement.
the GPA requirements. But with that said, the 2 that got in are really good, So, yes, we only have 15, 16 students right now, but the ones that we have are really good. I think we will. I sat in Dr. Goatley, all the work they're doing at Brentsville High School. They're really setting the stage for recruitment, I feel like. So I got a lot of really good ideas there. Keeping track of those who applied and didn't get into the university as they go to JUCO, try to lure them in. A lot of our students are transfers from a JUCO college, but really just spreading the word.
Definitely.
And we're trying to do that this year. We're going to hopefully make a big push. We want to be obviously as many students as we can, but 20 or 30 at least.
Of course, and that visibility will just play into that even more. Well, thank you so much for doing this again and
of course.
putting up with me not once but twice now
Anytime.
with this. So we appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.